Success Insight shares the stories of the people with passion and drive who make things happen in the world. Here's your host, Howard Fox.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series on the Success Insight Podcast. The Outdoor Adventure Series celebrates individuals and families, businesses, and organizations that seek out and promote the exploration of the great outdoors. Our guest today is Rick Saez. Rick is an adventurer, author, an accomplished photographer, and a podcaster, and he is the host of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. Rick is committed to helping as many people as possible learn about, enjoy, and get energized by outdoor and adventure travel experiences. Rick, welcome to the Outdoor Adventure Series on the Success Insight Podcast.
Thanks, Howard. It's great to be here. It's going to be fun.
I no doubt will. And, for our listeners, as usual, in the spirit of full disclosure, I met Rick at the Outdoor Adventure Writers of Outdoor Adventure Writers, the Outdoor Writers Association of America's annual conference in Vermont early in this past August. And Rick is, as I had shared in the notes, a podcaster. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity to bring another outdoor adventure enthusiast and a podcaster, really to kind of hear his story and what has driven him in this direction. So Rick, once again, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited. That was a great conference, man. I don't know what you got out of it, but I got a ton out of it.
I got a lot. And I guess the question for you, that I want to ask is, was this your first conference for the Outdoor Writers Association of America?
Yeah. First time.
Wow. And, this was mine as well. I had just joined it early. Actually, it was early this year. Oh my God. Time just flies so quickly. What brought you to the OWAA? What brought you to them?
Well, I know Chaz Chesick, the executive director, from his days in adventure travel. He was with the Adventure Travel Trade Association, I think maybe when I was with Eagle Creek, but maybe it was after that. Anyway, he was connected to that. So our adventure travel connection connected us, and then he saw me as the podcaster. I'm not a media guy. I just stumbled on the podcasting thing, and he said, "Hey, he knew my outdoor background and said, why don't you join this?" So I joined. I think I've been a member a couple of years, and it's just I've gone to a couple of their webinars they have, and just learned so much from so many of those people, because I need all the help I can get on the media side of this, the promotional, all that stuff. I'm a sales guy. I don't know media, so it's great.
I found them through actually a publicist that I work with, and she sends me her book authors. Oh. And she had said, you really ought to check these guys out. And I was just really fortunate to be able to, pursue this, meet Chaz and learn more about it, and to attend the conference. And so you've got 2 years on me, so I got to catch up with you at some point.
Yeah. Well, I've only been to one conference, but some of those webinars are great. And they're great, after going to the conference, it's just all great people. So it's all.
I thought everybody was really nurturing. It's like, what do you do? How do you do it? What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
And that's what I like. There's so many conferences. I mean, again, as you said, you're a sales guy, and you go to a conference, everybody's trying to get you to buy something.
Yeah. No, that was great. I enjoyed it a lot. Looking forward to the next one.
Me too. I'm going to figure out how to get to Casper. Like Vermont, it's not an easy place to get to.
Okay, I can drive to Casper. It's a couple days, but it's a beautiful drive, and I can fish along the way, so I'll drive.
Well, that's not bad. I think I'm about 12 hours, so I may just do that myself. Yeah. Well, listen, for our listeners, I'd love if you could share a little bit about your background and how you got into the outdoor space and the world of photography, and eventually we'll get to the podcasting, but just definitely want to hear that journey of yours.
Yeah. I got into the outdoors as a kid. I mean, my grandfather hunted and fished, and my family camped. We had a 1959 Airstream trailer when I was growing up. And so we take that out on weekends, camping and stuff. So I've been camping and fishing and hiking and hunting since I was a little guy. And in school, I was pretty good at architectural draftsing in high school, won a couple of awards, and was originally planning to go to school to be an architect. And the school's program had a great program, Cal Poly Pomona, but in order to get in, you had to take the as a freshman, it was impacted. You couldn't get in as a freshman. You had to wait a couple years and do all your general ed stuff. And I went to a high school where I was fortunate enough to get A's and B's without taking a book home. So I didn't know how to study.
Oh my.
So went to college, basically was, getting horrible grades. And the school said, look, you need to go get your grades up and come back and see if you're serious about this or we're going to kick you out. So I left the college and went to a junior college and took a wildlife law enforcement class and an environmental biology class. And that's when I really got exposed to, I would say, the professional educational side of the outdoors. I didn't realize you could get a degree in outdoor recreation or anything. And the wildlife biology class was phenomenal because the guy had slides of Glen Canyon before it was flooded. And so he showed those slides and saw the beauty and whatnot. And I was thumbing through the Cal Poly Pomona catalog and saw outdoor recreation and realized I can get a degree in outdoor recreation, and went back and switched majors. And I thought my dad was going to kick me out of the house, but I struggled through it and ended up getting a master's degree in outdoor recreation. And that just sealed the deal for me as my love for outdoors. And through that, I was teaching at a part of the thing when I graduated college was I had to do an internship. And I did it at a 6th grade outdoor camp in San Diego where you taught outdoor educational courses. And then the teaching schedule is you have summers off. So one of the guys I was teaching with asked me if I wanted to help him run an outdoor camp up on the Kern River, the Kern Plateau in the Eastern Sierra. And I said, yeah, that sounds great. He says, well, the only thing is you have to go to their river guide school first. It's a river guiding company. I said, oh, well, okay, twist my arm, So I go learn how to become a river guide and was just hooked on that. So I river guided for 6 years, ended up not doing the camp with him. And then the camp didn't end up going anyway. And then through river guiding, some buddies and I opened a little retail/guiding shop in Kernville. And we guided and did mountain bike trips and rock climbing trips and rafting trips and whatnot. And the summer ended and we were going to have a little retail shop. And they said, well, you used to work at retail. I worked at Adventure 16 down in San Diego on weekends while I was still at the outdoor school. And they said, why don't you go to the outdoor show and figure out some stuff for us to buy in the store? So I thought, okay, well, I'll go see what I can do. So I went up there and through friends of friends met the group that was bringing the brand Montbell into the U.S. for the first time back in 1989. And long story short, they ended up hiring me as a sales rep. So I left the river guiding little outdoor shop and became a sales rep for Montbell. And that got me into the outdoor industry side of things, the retail wholesale business, and as a sales guy. And then from there, I, left Montbell and worked at Eagle Creek and customer service and ended up as sales director there. I was there for 10 years. I ran the brand Dana Design for a couple of years, great backpacks. I worked at Low Pro camera bags. I'm into fly fishing. So I had a stint with Umpqua Feather Merchants. So a bunch of different outdoor brands for, I'd say 20, 25 years as an outdoor sales guy, which was great. I mean, it's just fantastic experience. And then sorry, go ahead. I'll stop.
No, I was just it's amazing how one thing just built on another with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty incredible. I mean, it was just a fortuitous calamity, if you will, just, you lose one job for one reason or the other and you stumble into another one. And I got laid off from Low Pro. The camera bag business was struggling for a while. The photo business is really, it's a challenging business. And Low Pro they were owned at the time by a VC firm and they were in the process of selling to Viatech, who owns them now. And there was a lot of consolidation and layoffs. And I was caught, not the last round of layoffs, but one of the later rounds of layoffs. And I was over 50 years old and I saw this coming. So I'd been, throwing up my resume and not getting any luck and thinking, man, over 50, I may never work again. What the heck am I going to do? So I've lived off and on here in Bishop, California. So I moved back to Bishop, got a job with a buddy of mine who had a little consulting firm and we did some product design work for some brands. And while I was working at Low Pro, I was living in Alameda and I had a 45-minute one-way commute. And that's when I started listening to podcasts. I hadn't listened to podcasts for a while.
Okay.
And I listened. And then back then, that's when Tim Ferriss was real big and Pat Flynn and all those guys, John Lee Dumas, they were just becoming the celebrities of podcasting. And Pat Flynn had How I Built This, or no, that was Guy Raz. But Pat Flynn had a podcast where he talked about all these businesses people started. But the Tim Ferriss show was my favorite one. He wrote the 4 Hour Work Week.
Oh
and
yeah, great book.
Great book, great podcast. He goes long sometimes, but he
Yeah.
interviews all his buddies that he runs around with. And I thought, Tim just talks to all his friends. I could talk to all the people I know in the outdoor industry and start an outdoor podcast.
Sure.
So I did a little research and realized that at the time there weren't that many outdoor podcasts. And I wanted to create a unique angle. So hence the biz part of it, and the outdoor biz, I can get the advice and tactics and things that everybody uses, from sales reps to brands to whatever, to product designers. So, and I kind of followed the Tim Ferriss prescription. He had some training and education on how to get started. And he said, don't go buy a bunch of equipment. Don't go commit to doing 200 episodes. Just test drive it, see if you like it. So I had some recording equipment. I had a few friends around locally that I could interview. So I did 3, 4, 5 episodes, and I loved it. It was just so much fun. And here we are this week. I just dropped episode 301, drops tomorrow. So it just turned out to be a really good thing for me.
That's fantastic. Now, 301, this is cumulative since you started, or?
Yeah, every Tuesday. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm trailing you just a little bit, but that's okay.
It's not about the number.
Oh, it's not. Something what I love about it, and I say this almost after every episode, is like, wow, I just learned something new today from someone. And I look at it as every time you have a podcast, you're building a new relationship.
Yep.
And that's what is, to me, phenomenal about, this medium. So as you got involved with the podcasting, what level of effort was involved with, producing this? Because a lot of people, as you well know, and again, I'm probably talking to the choir now, is, they come to you potentially and they say, hey, I'd love to be on your podcast.
Yep.
And they have no idea the level of effort that goes into producing the podcast.
Yeah.
It's just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah.
So what was that a surprise to you? Is just everything that went into producing an episode?
I thought it was relatively simple. And I think because I had so much experience editing and producing photos and things, right? So, and I have obviously used Adobe Photoshop and InDesign and all those things. So Adobe Audition fit right in there. But the first few episodes I did were in GarageBand. And it just seemed, the workflow is, you get the content, like you capture the photo, and then you have to do a lot of things to the photo to make it saleable. Well, you capture the audio and you have to put it together this way. And some of the early training out there, and if you listen to enough podcasts, you realize, okay, somewhere there's music in there, and somewhere there's an intro and an outro. And so, you can figure that out pretty quick. So it was really, I thought that part was pretty simple. And I had no problem getting guests. I mean, it was just, I shouldn't say that. In the early days, the outdoor space didn't really know or line up the podcast. The outdoor industry had the same challenge, I think, when websites were a thing. I was a sales guy at Eagle Creek when websites were a thing, or becoming a thing. And we were trying to convince retailers that, you need a website. That's another sales channel for you, So that was a little bit like pulling teeth way back in the early days. Now everybody's got a website, but the same thing was happening to some of my guests. Well, I don't know if I could be on a podcast. I said, no, just come on. It's just like you. It's just a conversation. We're just going to chat, and being a sales guy, I have, I guess, this learned ability to ask a bunch of questions. And I'm just curious as a result of all those sales years, So the interviewing part, I was surprised at how natural that came. I thought that was going to be my biggest challenge.
I think that's really interesting, because my background years ago was IT. And as I tell people, I'm a recovering IT business consultant, but as a coach, I'm used to asking questions.
Yeah.
And there's a natural curiosity. And I think it's the same, for you. You're used to having a conversation, as a sales guy, you're used to helping your client really articulate what their needs are. What are they looking for? Problems they're trying to solve.
Yeah.
And with your podcast, the Outdoor Biz Podcast, it's kind of like deconstructing the journey that your guests have gone through, how to bring this product to market. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah. And I really wanted to share the story of these folks too, because we all have not only wonderful, interesting adventure stories, that part of it, but some of the things that some of these guys have done. Like, I've been fortunate to interview founders of brands, iconic brands like Eagle Creek. And, people that are just created the industry. Because when I got started in the industry, I remember the first few trade shows were still tiny little trade shows in the bottom of the Reno Hilton. They weren't these big, massive things at the Denver Convention Center or Salt Lake City Convention Center. They were pretty tiny. And now it's a multi-billion-dollar business and influences politics and all kinds of things. So my career grew up along with the industry itself. So that was pretty cool.
As you are bringing guests onto the Outdoor Biz Podcast, again, you got a lot of contacts in the industry. What's their, I don't know, the questions that did they come to you with? This is what we want to get out of it, or hey, I've never done this before, or this is new for us. How are you helping them navigate this new medium?
Yeah, it's all over the boards. The first thing is, I ask them about their outdoor, how they got into the outdoor. I find that fascinating. How'd you fall in love with the outdoors? Tell us about your first outdoor experience. I interviewed Nick Sargent from Snow Sports Industries of America last week, and I asked him, being a snow sports guy, I said, so tell us about your first time on skis. What was that like? And how about your most recent time on skis? So it's a lot of outdoor questions about how they fell in love with the outdoors. And then we get into the business part of it and tell us what you do and how you do and why you do it. And then I kind of follow the Tim Ferriss wrap up. I'm really an avid reader, so I like to know what everybody's reading. Helps me add to my book list. And then I love gear, being a gear. I think all of us in the outdoor space are gear junkies. So I always love to know their favorite piece of gear under $100, because that puts a little pressure on them. That's a pretty tricky question to answer. But so, yeah, it's just a curiosity thing and just trying to find out their story and share. Because really, even though the podcast got started, for me, I didn't have anything to do, wonder what I was going to do. It's really about sharing all these great stories that, we go to this trade show a couple times a year. And I got to tell you, Howard, it's like a high school reunion now. I mean, I've been doing it for 30 years and I've grown up with these people. So you walk the aisles. You can't get down an aisle to your next appointment without stopping 5 or 6 times to say hi to somebody, quick hug, I got to go. And some of the stories that are told in those aisles, especially after 3:00 when the beers come out, they may never get shared again, and that's really the catalyst for the show is I want to share those stories with the world. And so that's what I aim to do.
When we were at the conference, you had your gear bag and you pulled out your Zoom H6. And by the way, I have my Zoom H6 right on my desk.
Nice.
And actually, I have to thank you, by the way, Rick. I got to thank you. Is I have been recording directly to my PC on Zoom, and I have decided, I'm going to go back to recording on the H6. So I've got really good quality sound. Now I'm working through the logistics of how do I get my guests to record directly onto their computer. As opposed to me recording, via Zoom.
Yep.
That's my little over the holidays. Okay, let me figure out the logistics of that one.
Yeah.
But the idea is you had your gear bag, and I'm thinking as you're talking about these conventions that have grown up, they're getting larger. You're walking down the aisles. Are you doing any interviews like on location in the moment with your guests?
I'm not doing enough. I think I've actually only done a handful of them. It's a really busy show, and most people are there to do business. So I want to be mindful of that. I don't want to steal time away. They're all off and running, and I think they get hit by enough media folks, and I know everybody well enough that I can go back and we can hop on a phone call and I get good audio and good quality video. But I've done a few. I did a 6-person conversation in a bar a couple of shows ago, which was pretty challenging audio wise and interesting. Turned out pretty good, but it's just, I try not to do that, but I have done it. Yeah.
Okay. I noticed in your show notes, you've done a lot of traveling overseas, Antarctica, what was it? Karnali River, Nepal, Caucasus. And first of all, there's a little envy going on, Rick. So again, full disclosure.
Yeah. I'm pretty lucky. Lucky.
Oh my God. But I'm thinking if you have equipment like, the H6 and you got a couple of mics, you could literally take and interview someone anywhere
in the world.
Yeah. And I'm thinking that in itself is a great opportunity, if not for you or myself, but for someone else, is just take this equipment, and because you never know when the opportunity is going to come to interview someone.
Yeah, I take any opportunity I can to go record outside. If there's an opportunity if someone's passing through, or I'm going to be in an area, like at that convention, Mandela interviewed me down by the stream one afternoon. So I try to use that opportunity as much as I can, but I still don't do it enough. And one of the original visions for the show was to find enough or the right sponsors to be on the road. I don't know if you remember in California years ago, there was this Huell Hauser had this outdoor show where he came on once a week, and he'd be up and down California somewhere interviewing somebody at some place. And matter of fact, the guy I worked with at Eagle Creek for 10 years, Tim McGuire, sales buddy of mine, we worked at A16 together and then Eagle Creek together. He calls me the Huell Hauser of the outdoors. So that was one of the visions, was to be able to find enough sponsors to do this on the road, go interview them in their environment, whether it be in the, down by the river where they're getting ready to put in and go on a whitewater raft trip, or a climbing adventure, or in their factory, whatever it might be. So that's still kind of one of the things that I aspire to. But yeah, it's like I need to do a lot more of that. Funny story there, though. The first interview I did outside, I completely botched. It was with Jim Thompson, one of the founders of I'm drawing a blank on, I can't believe, Backcountry Wilderness Experience, Jim and his brother Greg. And he's a big, always been a big hero of mine, good friend of mine. And I got a couple of lav mics, and I got my H4. We're down by this stream, have a couple beers open. We're talking. I can see everything moving on the H4, but I can't hear it in my headset. I thought, well, the needle's moving. It's got to be working, right? The light was red and all that stuff. So we sit there and talk for, I don't know, hour maybe. I get back and I got nothing. And I had to go to him and say, Jim, I hate to tell you this, but man, I got zero. It was just so embarrassing. But it couldn't have to be a better guy. He was totally understanding. We redid it and got it. But, you got to be careful when you're working with all this stuff, as you know.
Oh my. And, you just brought back a similar story. I used to have a radio show for a short time, and it's
cool.
It was like, it wasn't as cool as it sounds, but I had this guy, CEO of this organization down in Southern California, and the people that were producing the episode, something happened on their end. And so I actually had to go back to this guy and say, something happened. I'd like, would you mind doing this again? And he was all over it. In fact, the second interview was much better. But it brings up this point, though, is that, even here, I'm in the comfort of my home. You're in the comfort, at least you've got great sound. So I'm assuming you're in your studio at home. You have to plan and have these redundancies, because you never know when something's going to happen.
Yeah, you do. You have to have backup. Yep. You never know. And you never know too, when Bishop here, sometimes the power goes out. I've been midstream and the wind, they shut the power off for some reason. The wind's blowing, or it's fire danger or whatever. So you got to cover yourself.
What do you do when something like that happens?
Well, I have to wait till the power comes back on to do anything, because I can't even make a phone call. So, they lock it all up. So all I have is my phone. I don't have a landline or anything.
Okay.
Here. So yeah.
Wow.
And I that's one of the things that I talk about in my pre-interview speech, right? Hey, by the way, just so you know, I'm in Bishop, and if something goes down, I'll call you eventually.
That makes sense. When I was starting the podcast, I was still back in Chicago, because I've only been in Vegas for about a year and a half. And I lived on Michigan Avenue, and you would get ambulances and fire trucks and police cars going up and down the street. And sometimes it almost seemed like, Rick, it would only happen when I was getting ready to record.
Yep.
And after a while, I used to say, something, this is a feature of the podcast.
That's right. Yep. Enjoy it, folks. This is live.
This is that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
When your listeners are, they're on their drive, they're going somewhere, they've got a 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour. Who are those individuals? Are they folks who are also outdoor enthusiasts? What give a feel for what, who they are, the ages, the genders, etc.?
Yeah. It's everybody from brand founders like Jim Thompson. I worked at Eagle Creek for 10 years. I interviewed Steve Barker, and the founder of Eagle Creek. Doug Robinson is a really famous, renowned ski guide and climbing guide here in the Eastern Sierra. I worked with Doug way back in the day at Montbell. He and I are really good friends. I've interviewed him. He was on a sat phone in Wyoming. And I didn't think it was going to work because you know how sat phones are a little sketchy, satellite phones, and it was perfect. We talked for an hour and a half. So, and then it's also, you know, people on the marketing side of a brand, they're marketers or sales guys or product designers, other media folks, PR folks, authors, just photographers. I cover also, you know, I've worked in the traditional outdoor business with brands like JanSport and Eagle Creek. Eagle Creek connected me to the adventure travel industry. So that's how I can get people from Sobeck and mountain travel and all these other places. And then I also am an avid fly fisherman. So I worked with Umpqua for a bit as a sales marketing guy. So I get into the fly fishing world. And as an outdoor photographer, I end up working at Lowpro. So I have access to pretty much everything that touches the outdoor space. And I think now it's a lot easier to get guests now that podcasts are a thing than it was 3 years ago when I started. And now it's really people just say, yeah, it's a matter of finding the time because everybody's so busy, you know.
You know, that was going to be a comment is it seems like today people are more willing to be on the podcast, though sometimes I think it's still difficult because there's this hesitancy. Maybe they've never thought about it and they're not ready to, you know, put their foot in the water. How do you, if you have a guest that I want this guy, woman on the podcast, you know, I know them, but you're having difficulty getting them to say yes. Is there a technique you use to, you know, kind of ease them into this? Because it's such a wonderful opportunity. At least that's my perspective.
I agree. I haven't had that challenge. The challenge for me is all about timing, right? But I think one of the things is everybody hates the sound of their own voice. And a lot of people also are a little shy. You know, they don't like to promote themselves. They don't like to talk about themselves. And some of the things I tell people is, you know, first of all, your voice is our voice. You know, don't worry about your voice. Your voice is going to sound fine. Nobody likes the sound of their voice. And when they hear that kind of, because I haven't met anybody that did, you know, everybody doesn't like it. I've come to like mine now that I've heard it so many times and everybody's getting me such great feedback, but most people don't like that. And then the other thing I tell them is, look, it's not really, you know, don't think about it as you're talking to the world. You're talking to me. It's just us. Pretend we're in the aisles of outdoor. We have a beer, outdoor show. We have a beer. We're just chatting. And some of the questions I have, I think, you know, breaks the ice. How'd you get into the outdoor industry? And they start talking about trips and adventures and the gear piece, you know. So it's a way to help them get along.
Once you start getting them to share their story, it's so much easier, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Where do you see your role as a professional podcaster, an accomplished podcaster going, you know, in the coming years? Because I mean, you and I at the conference, I mean, you had your aha moments, I had mine.
Yep.
Where do you see yourself going within this podcast medium?
Well, I have I think the first thing that I'm trying to do at the moment is really get the outdoor adventure industry more excited about podcasts. There are more now than there were when I started, but I really think that especially the outdoor lifestyle industries, whether it's outdoor or some other sports or action related activity, people don't always have time to go watch your YouTube video or read your blog post on your website. It's important that you do all that, but I think the other thing is a podcast is something that those of us that are really active can listen to anytime. You know, we don't have to be near a computer. The internet can be down, you know, the power can be off. And as long as we downloaded it to our phone, we can go listen to it any place, anytime. So I think that's one of the huge opportunities. And, you know, I think we've confirmed podcasts are a thing. There's 1.5 million active podcasts in the US and 16 million listeners. So it's a thing. And, you know, online folks or active folks and podcasters typically are more likely to subscribe to Netflix to subscribe to Netflix and Amazon Prime, meaning they're going to watch other video through those channels and probably less likely to be exposed to television advertising. So podcasts are a good place for people to advertise. They're pretty affluent, you know, they have a pretty decent income. And One of the things that if you go Google I think it's I'm drawing a blank on the media, but Edison Infinite Dial Research. Go look up that Edison Infinite Dial Research, and Apple has some research, and you'll find that, some of the things that they say is, and they're interviewing listeners, and listeners say that they're more likely to follow companies and brands that they've heard on a podcast because it's an authentic endorsement. It's not an ad. They talk about a product, or it's endorsed by me or endorsed by you as a sponsorship opportunity. So I just think there's many, many ways that brands and businesses, even small businesses, can benefit from a podcast. And it's not that hard to produce and pull off. And you don't have to do it. You can get your staff to do it. It could be a different staff member every week. You can do a show once a month. You don't have to do it every week. It's just, and your voice, there's nothing like the human voice. I think your voice is your most important superpower. It's just the opportunity for them to hear directly from you is huge. So.
Yeah, it's very insightful. Have you thought about incorporating video into your podcast?
Yeah, I've thought about it. I haven't done it yet because it's I don't know how to edit video. I edit still images. That's why I don't shoot much video, because I really don't have it. I don't have the time or the space. That's a lot of time. And again, it just goes back to that voice thing. I think your voice is just the most powerful thing you have. You can hear inflection, you can hear tone. Just by hearing someone's voice, whether they're excited or upset or mad, whatever it is. So I think I'm all about the voice right now. Maybe that'll change, but.
I was at a Wisconsin Outdoor Communicators Association, WOCA. So Dan Small, Patrick Durkin are members of that organization, and also OWAA. And there was a gentleman at the conference who was a fly fisherman, and his hobby was tying flies.
Yeah.
And so we had agreed that we're going to do a podcast, but he also wanted to do have the visual. So I think we'll end up with a Zoom interview. Yeah. And
for tying flies, you're probably going to need some video.
Yeah, definitely have to have that.
Yeah.
Rick, as you look back at your career, you and I we're in the same age range.
Yep, we're in the neighborhood, I'm sure.
Yeah. As you look back in your career, any surprises for you? Like, wow, and this is, never expected that to happen? Or is this like one, circumstance after another just kind of builds and you just create opportunities along the way?
Yeah, the whole thing is just, I feel so lucky because, as I said, I was going to go to school for architecture. That was the thing. My sister's an attorney. I remember sitting around the table 2 times. I thought my dad was going to kick me out of the family. Once was when we came back from touring the steel mill in Fontana, California, and my grandfather and him sat me down and said, "Okay, we'd get you a good job out there." And I'm like, there's enough money in the world that would get me to work out there. It was a hot, windy, sweaty day. And I'm like, no way. And then I came, back from college and said, I'm going to change my degree to outdoor recreation. And I thought, I'm done. I'm out. He's going to kick me out. He's not paying for anything. And we were a blue collar family, so we all paid our way a lot of the way. But from being a river guide and an outdoor 6th grade camp teacher to being the director of sales at Eagle Creek, and some of the great brands I worked with and great people I met, and some of these associations, whether it's an outdoor industry association or OWAA and all the great people, it's just one big serendipitous moment, seems like to me. It's been great.
I love it. As you kind of take stock of what you've accomplished, where you're at today, are there some adventures that are still on your bucket list?
Oh man, yeah. I've been to every continent but one, so I need to get to that one continent, Australia. But yeah, I've been to all those continents. I've got to trek and fish and hike and do all those things all around the world. I caught a roosterfish on the fly this a couple of days ago down in Loreto, Mexico. That was one of the bucket list items. But there's so many. Whether it's an iconic photo that you want to capture, or a fish that you want to get, or one of those just iconic places, that you want to go experience for yourself up close and personal. It's just, I don't have it all listed out, but there's so many places in the world to see, just amazing.
Well, what I love is that, just your background and the fact you have traveled and with and the adventures that you have taken people on and helped people through these products, you definitely have a worldview. And that I think is so important, because so much going on, around this globe, and, good travel, taking care of the environment. And there's a lot of opportunity for somebody with your expertise just to.
Well, thank you. And seeing how other people live too is pretty eye-opening. You go to, the Serengeti in Africa and see how some of those folks live, or Kathmandu, and, it's the Caucasus Mountains. I mean, we were over there on the border of Russia, and we went to this one place where there was a Russian outpost with guards and guns, and those guys just lived in these huts. It's just like, it's incredible to see how people live. So yeah, it's a small world, really, when you think of it.
Yes, definitely. Is there a website or online journal, perhaps a book, that you could share with our listeners? We kind of call this the insight to go, for our listeners, and try to do it almost every show. And it's just something you would leave for our listening audience, some insight or recommendation that you guys got to check this out. What would come to mind for you?
Oh man, so many books. Let's see. It would either be a book or one of my insights, I think. One of my insights is really, I think, I don't think you can go wrong with any adventure book. I don't really have any specific books. Some of my favorites were, by the usual writers that we all know, the outdoor guys. But the thing that I think has gotten me through a lot of crazy situations, scary situations, is something I learned in sports. I was a baseball, football player, and we're all going to make mistakes. We all are going to screw up a job. We're going to blow an interview. We're going to do something, and sometimes it's going to be a bigger deal than other times. But what you really have to do is, you made the mistake. That's water under the bridge. Forget about it. Pick yourself up, dust yourself off, put your glove back on, and get back in the game. Because then the ball's coming to you again. Make sure you don't drop it this time, So that's my insight to go, I think.
I love it. By the way, have you watched Ted Lasso?
I haven't.
Oh man, you got to check it out.
I'll check it out.
It'll be, you could stream two seasons in a week and on Apple.
Oh, cool.
And it's free. But I actually rewatching it, but there was a quote in one of the episodes, is be a goldfish, because goldfish don't have a memory.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
Thank you, Ted Lasso. Well, listen,
I like it.
Yeah. So Rick, if our listeners would like to learn more about you and your work, and just everything from the podcasting, the photography, where's the best places for them to go?
The best place to find me is ricksaez.com. That's where all my, you go to ricksaez.com/listen. That's where my podcast lives. It's on all the podcast places too, Apple, everywhere.
Sure.
And then you can go to ricksaez.com/look, and that's where all my photos are. And then ricksaez.com/learn is where some of my coaching stuff doesn't quite live yet, but we're still working on that part. I just redid this website, but that's where you can get involved with me. And I coach people on podcasting. I still help people get a product design if they have an idea, or help them through you do some consulting with some brands and stuff. So I do a lot of that stuff. But yeah, that's where everything is. And then all the socials, it's either Rick Saez or the Outdoor Biz Podcast, and all the socials.
Okay, sounds good. Well, we will definitely provide the backlinks to the website, cool. ricksaez.com, as well as to your social sites. Rick, it's been a pleasure to get to know you further. I was literally looking forward to meeting you and attending your workshop at the OWAA conference, and it was a great workshop, and looking forward to seeing you up in Casper this coming May.
Yeah, we'll get together in Casper again. That'll be fun.
You got it. And
thank you, Howard. I appreciate it.
Fantastic. Well, we will definitely look forward to sharing this episode with our audience. And between the two of us, we're going to get people even more excited about podcasts.
Excellent. We'll do it. I love it.
All right. Okay, folks, we have just been chatting with Rick Saez. He's an adventurer, author, an accomplished photographer, and a podcaster. He's the host of the Outdoor Biz Podcast. And what a pleasure to hear from Rick and have him share his journey from deciding, I'm not going to go into architecture, and found his way into the outdoor recreation space and then sales, and then ultimately into this really being a podcasting superstar with wonderful series, the Outdoor Biz Podcast. And do you want to check those out? And just some great interviews with some of the leading products and the leaders of those companies to really get some insightful information and about not only how they got into the outdoor space and their journey, but really about the products that they are making available into the outdoor folks just like me who, if you're a fly fisherman, a photographer, a camper, there's a product just for you. As far as Rick, do check him out on his website, ricksaez.com, and we'll provide that backlink, and you can then get to his photography, his classes, as well as his podcast. And you'll also be able to get links back to his social sites as well. Okay, folks, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, do go out there, have a phenomenal day. Do remember to check us out on successinsightpodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook and LinkedIn, as well as the podcasting platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, and especially Spotify, where we have our Outdoor Adventure Series playlist. Okay, folks, take care of yourselves. The holidays are coming up, so be safe, have fun, take care of your families, the community, and we will see you on another episode of the Outdoor Adventure Series on the Success Insight Podcast. Take care now.
Success Insight is a production of Fox Coaching and First Story Strategies. Find us online, successinsightpodcast.com.